the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Because every one of those teams might finish somewhere in that 81 to 85 win window. So
I think it requires, like, if it goes that way, is that no one pushing more chips in at the deadline between like the Brewers, the Cubs, the Reds, and the Pirates.
I mean, I think we can pretty safely bet that the Brewers are not going to go all in at the deadline.
No.
I think we can pretty safely bet that the Pirates will not do so either. I think the Reds are a possibility, but I think they'd have to be pretty well in command of the division to do that. And that pretty much just leaves the Cubs, who I think is the most likely of these teams to do something in the division, because I think they're the most likely to be at the division. I think they're probably the odds-on favorite for the division at this point, very early in the season. Mm-hmm. But who knows? Obviously, it's the Cubs, it's the Ricketts. You know, they don't do what we think they're going to do, so we shall see.
Final thing here, real quick, 2 minutes. Jon Tayler, Stephen Strasburg officially retired this past week. Your favorite Stephen Strasburg memory, and do you think he's a Hall of Famer?
I'll answer the second one first, because it's no. It's just no.
There's no way Strasburg's a Hall of Famer?
I don't think so. If my feeling generally is, unless if you can be you can be a Hall of Fame pitcher in one of two ways now at this point. One of those peak durability guys like CC Sabathia, who will be elected whenever. I think he's the first year on the ballot is this coming year. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think he will get in. Kind of the last of that particular breed of like workhorses, or you have to have like a Pedro Martinez level peak. And to me, Strasburg probably had close to that peak, but the kind of the bar in my mind is Johan Santana, who had one of the greatest peaks of any pitcher in Major League history and fell off the Hall of Fame ballot after 1 year. Yeah. Which I think I personally think that's a mistake. I don't know if Johan Santana is a Hall of Famer, but I think he deserved a much longer debate and conversation. But in my mind, I
would create like the Hall of Very Good, or the Hall of You Should Remember Player X. It rolls off the tongue. It's very easy, very concise. But like the Brad Radke's, like there's just Hall of, like they deserve to not be lost to history. Like even if Strasburg's not a Hall of Famer, he belongs somewhere, man.
He does, but I think that's the thing with the Hall of Fame. If your peak is not as good or high as Johan Santana's, and Strasburg's was not by either the traditional or advanced metrics, you're just not going to get any Hall of Fame consideration. I think Strasburg, unfortunately, falls into the same Hall of Very Good but not good enough category, and for kind of similar reasons that Tim Lincecum does. You don't
think Tim gets in either?
No, I don't think there's any chance Tim Lincecum gets in.
He just belongs somewhere, though. He was an important part of the 21st century for Major League Baseball.
But this is part of the thing when we're talking about the aesthetics of baseball. It's like, what do we do with these starters who are undeniably great in our time, but who did not have the longevity and the durability to compare to guys like, you know, even as recent as like Greg Maddux or Tom Glavine, to say nothing of you know, the stars of the 60s and the 50s and the 30s and the 20s. Like it's all, baseball is changing very dramatically in some ways, and I think the pitchers of our era in particular kind of bear the brunt of the kind of negative, you know, maybe not negative is not the right word, but they kind of they're kind of this weird guinea pig for how we're going to look at it. But as the first question, favorite memory, I think it's got to be his debut.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever in my life seen a pitcher that good like that. If you ever have,
he's also like the rare guy who just.
He met the hype. Yes,
like that's the other thing is like it's just so easy to overlook now, but so many guys don't go the way Strasburg goes. And Strasburg was just the prince who was promised, and then he was just exactly that.
And for as much as he got crapped on over the years for his injury history and for a seeming dislike or inability to come up big in big moments, he shoved that up everyone's ass in the 2019 postseason.
Yeah,
he went out he basically ended his career to win a World Series ring. So
good for him. We love Strasburg.
I love Strasburg. I will never say a bad thing about Stephen Strasburg.
Except when he shaved. The clean shaven Strasburg was insane. That was should have never been allowed. I just never do that.
Let me also add shame on the Nationals for dragging this out the way they did.
Yeah,
absolutely no reason to do that. Hopefully, though, the air clears enough that they can have him back, so that Washington fans can, especially because they, you know, of all the fan bases, the Nationals guy I think screwed hardest by COVID in terms of could not celebrate that World Series in person, could not celebrate the guys who did that. Strasburg obviously was such an instrumental part of that. So I hope he gets his day in the spotlight, even though he doesn't seem to enjoy the spotlight at all. But yeah, I love Strasburg. I'm so sad he's gone, but he gave us some really, really great moments before he left.
There you go. Jon Tayler, always a pleasure, my friend, and I'll talk to you next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.